So today we're going to start with a demo of Stewardship Assist functionality. And then our panelist, Priya Nori, MD from Montefiore Medical System, will be sharing her experience using Stewardship Assist in her medical system and in her hospital. Afterwards, we will open the floor for those questions that come in via Q&A. I did want to share with you the results of our poll. It looks like of our attendees that we have so far, we have a few folks who are using our antimicrobial therapy app, which is that sort of green, used to be the green app. We're phasing that out over time. We have some folks who are using the Sanford Guide Collection app, which is our most robust mobile app experience that supports Windows 10 as well, and also the Stewardship Assist platform. So that's the one that comes with Stewardship Assist. I'll be showing you that later in the webinar for those of you who are unfamiliar with it. Some web edition users, a Stewardship Assist user, welcome. I haven't seen your name yet, but I'll look it up in a few minutes. So welcome to this. Hopefully you'll get some tips and tricks from Dr. Noria that will help us help you with that. And we have a few folks who've formerly used the app in the past few years or are familiar with our books, but not the mobile app. So this will be a eye-opening experience for those of you who have not used Sanford Guide in quite a while. So thank you for answering that poll. I'm going to actually skip over our other polls so that we can dive into the demo and have a little more time for Dr. Nori and that Q&A. So we're going to skip that, basically just wondering where everyone got their subscriptions. But I think that's going to be a little bit of a moot point as we move along. Obviously there are a couple folks on this call who are either unfamiliar with Sanford Guide entirely or unfamiliar with our digital product line. So I'm going to do a quick demo in just a moment here. Quick demo of the Sanford Guide digital product as a whole. And then once that is done, I'll dive into some of the specifics about Stewardship Assist and what that offers. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. I'm going to turn off my video. All right. So you should be seeing on your screen now the Sanford Guide web edition. This is the point where, or this is a site where our Sanford Guide editors make all of the changes to our digital content. We do have the same editorial board as for the book. So those 9 people you see on the cover of your pocket guide are the same 9 people who are involved in maintaining our digital information. There are a lot of differences though, between the digital and the print guides. The first one is we update our content every day for the digital site. So our editors are in there reading the latest publications, reading the latest advisories, looking at new product or package inserts for those new drugs as they come out, putting that information in the website right away. Another big difference, we're not trying to cram it into a tiny book. We don't have to cut things out, and you don't have to bring a magnifier glass around with you to read our book. So that's always helpful. So whenever we add new things, we don't have to take out old things, which we do in the books. We organize it by topic rather than by table. So we'll get into that a little more, but I'm just going to show you very quickly. We do have syndromes, pathogens, and anti-infectives, which are our primary topics. But we also have some expanded information on HIV and hepatitis that are not in the syndromes menu for a purely technical reason. They'll get there eventually. Prevention and prophylaxis, of course, the spectra of activity, which for our book users is table 4. Tables and tools menu, which we will dive into in a couple minutes. And then these right 2 tabs are for Stewardship Assist, and I will get to those when we get to that functionality. So everything's organized by topic, so you don't have to flip around as much. If you're looking for information on how to treat, adult uncomplicated UTI in a male, you can just go to that page. It's going to have all that treatment information. That said, we did carry some of those tables from the book over, and in fact expanded some of them and made them interactive. So I'll show you a few of those as we get a little further along. And then finally, you'll notice there's a search window at the top. So everything is fully searchable. It's a multi-term search, intelligent search. You can enter in as many different search terms as you want, and the more search terms you add, the more specific your results will be. So that is available. So I sort of alluded to the syndromes, pathogens, and anti-infectives earlier. I'm going to go ahead and just show you a couple of sample pages here. So in syndromes, let's just go to lower respiratory. Of course, we've got COVID-19, but I'm going to, which incidentally, for those of you who are not current Sanford Guide subscribers, our COVID-19 information is available without a subscription right now. So if you're looking for a concise resource on COVID, feel free to just go to sanfordguide.com. You'll see a big button at the top of the screen for that COVID information, and feel free to share that with your colleagues as well. But since that one is easily available, I'm going to go ahead and show you community-acquired pneumonia. This is what we call one of our signpost pages, this overview page. Diving in, we see we have a quick overview with some references. Everything in the digital format is extensively referenced, basically. If there's a chance that you might not remember something off the top of your head, or you might ask, well, gee, where did Sanford Guide get that? You can click those references. It will take you to the PubMed abstracts. And then, of course, if your hospital or health system has access to those resources through your library, these links for the full text will provide you with that information as well. I'm going to go ahead and dive into, let's go ahead and look at, how about adult inpatient community-acquired pneumonia. So this is fairly typical of our syndrome pages. So we always start with the clinical setting and etiologies, sort of giving you a sense of what we're looking at and how it might manifest itself. Scrolling down though, we do have primary regimens and alternative regimens. So you don't have to go to a different page to get that. It's all in here. Likewise, all of these drugs are linked to the drug information. So we can click on any of those. Antimicrobial stewardship, we pull that information out whenever possible to really highlight those stewardship considerations. And that's not part of Stewardship Assist. It's included in Stewardship Assist, but you don't need Stewardship Assist to get this. This is just the Sanford Guide editorial board highlighting those specific stewardship considerations. I'm going to go ahead and click on one of these drug links so we can get a sense what our drug pages look like. So we're going to go ahead and click ceftriaxone. And as soon as the page loads, I'm not sure what's happening here, but as soon as the page loads, we will see one of our antibacterial pages. They're all formatted in the same way. So we do have up at the top, of course, the primary editor and the last modification date, along with brand names, trade names, generics, any sort of way that that drug might be referenced. Scrolling down, we have usage and dosing information. And unlike the paper guides where you have to go to a different table for different information, in the digital version, we include all the different patient populations and their dosing considerations on the same page. So you see here we have adult dose, we have pediatric dose, renal or hepatic adjustments if applicable, obesity adjustments, again with a reference linked out. We highlight those adverse effects, spectrum of activity, so that's table 4 from the book. This is one way it's shown. I'll show you the other way in a little bit. Pharmacology information. Kind of scroll through this quickly. And again, we do have a pharmacology table. Drug-drug interactions. We do have a drug-drug interaction table. I'll show you that. And then any other comments related to the use of this anti-infective. So that's how pathogens are organized. Or I'm sorry, that's how anti-infectives are organized. And we do organize them in the menus by drug class. So if it's a more obscure drug, or you have somebody who's perhaps newer and just trying to keep track of everything, they can always get a quick reminder, of what your other options are within a given drug class just by going through the menus. Finally, we have pathogen pages. I'm just going to go ahead in here and pick a pathogen page. Ignore that for now. We'll get to it. So if you hit a pathogen page, again, we're going to start off with when it was last updated, clinical setting, classification, and then again, we dive right into primary and alternative regimens. Now, something that is new in the past year or so is we've started parsing out these regimens based on lab reports. So both empiric and specific therapy based on what is detected in the lab. So that's a nice new feature for you that's available here and allows you to really hone in on the appropriate treatment for your patient. Scrolling down, we have alternative regimens and antimicrobial stewardship considerations. And then, of course, additional comments, which in the case of Campylobacter pneumoniae, there are quite a few. So we've got combination therapy highlighted and references behind that as well. So that is our 3 primary content types, again, syndromes, pathogens, and anti-infectives. We also have tables and tools, and we have our Stewardship Assist. So tables and tools, I'm going to go into the antibacterial table first. This is the spectrum of activity that Sanford Guide, I think, is fairly well known for. We have our pathogens along the left. We have our drugs along the top. Anything with a black triangle in the corner means there's a note related to that. So we can see that this is active in vitro, but it's not well established in terms of efficacy. So that just means there's a note associated. Likewise, we don't have to look at all 8,000 plus cells at the same time. If you scroll to the edges, we can actually go into add bug drug, and we can add in drug groups. So if I wanted to add in our carbapenems, we can do that. If we wanted to add in similarly pathogens, so we can do pathogen groups, and I'm just picking things at random here, and we can create a sort of a subdirectory. And the nice thing is on both the app and the website, they will remember what you had last time you were in here. So you can always, if you just exit out of this, navigate to another page and come back, you'll be back here. All these drugs and bugs are linked to the Sanford Guide content. And we'll spend some more time in here once I get to Stewardship Assist, which will be in just a few minutes. Other things I wanted to make sure everyone's aware of, we do have some great calculators built in, colistin dosing, creatinine clearance, GFR, and then new, I think it was last month or maybe the month before, a really robust vancomycin AUC calculator. This uses the new trapezoidal model, so it's not the Bayesian model, it's the trapezoidal model. But you can go ahead, and I should mention I'm not a clinician of any sort, so do not worry, no patients will be impacted by the values I'm entering here. I'm just going to put in some values so we can get a sense of how this calculator works. But you can go ahead and put in, I'll do 30, put in a few values, click calculate. It's going to give you your results. If those fall outside the range of 400 to 600 micrograms per milliliter, it will highlight that. We can also click on adjust dose if we want to do that. We can click on show calculations. So perhaps you're curious how Sanford Guide got these figures. This shows you all the different steps that we used and the formulae that we used. You can save your results as a PDF, and you can copy them as plain text, which is a really helpful tool if you ever want to, maybe you want to put this into your EHR. So I can go ahead and, let's pretend this is a patient record. I can just click Command Paste or Control Paste, depending on what kind of computer I'm using. It's going to give us the output. If we don't select show calculators on the previous screen, it'll look more like this, along with a timestamp, a date stamp, and then the source, which of course is the Sanford Guide AUC 24 calculator. So that's a new feature. I just wanted to make sure that we included in this demo, since it is fairly robust and is getting very positive feedback from our clients. In terms of other tables, we can go into drugs desensitization. We can go to drug-drug interactions. I'm going to just dive into that table to give you a sense of how this works. We have drugs along the left, bugs in the next column, impact, and then suggested management. Of course, it's searchable, so we can start typing in the name of a drug. It will show us any interactions. And if the drug is an anti-infective, it'll have a link to the Sanford Guide content as well. We also have tables on pharmacology, usage and dosing. We have pediatric dosing, renal adjustments, that sort of thing. Going to dive in here and show you the pediatric dosing table very quickly. But again, it works in the same way. It's got the drugs on the left. You can search, and it has your doses in the center of the table. So in the interest of saving time, I'm going to move on. But if anyone would like to see a more detailed demo of this, you can always contact us after this webinar. Let us know you're interested in a demo, and we can do a full product demo for your hospital. And we can also provide trials. So the last thing I want to show you before we dive into Stewardship Assist is our mobile app. So we do have mobile apps for all of our enterprise licenses that work for iOS, Android, and Windows 10. So in just a moment, we'll be looking at my mobile app. It is an iPad, but this does work on, as I said, Android devices. It'll work on cell phones. It is optimized based on screen size. You can see there's a lot of extra space on this screen. We're going to be adding some new features to that extra space in the next year or so. So stay tuned for that. But for today, I'm just going to highlight this mirrors the web edition content. So you notice the menu titles are the same as we saw on the web. Few differences. There's offline access, even if you don't have internet. So if you're in a dead zone in the hospital, or if your internet goes out, you still have access to those Sanford Guide drugs. The only thing you won't have your daily update, and you won't be able to click the external links, obviously, because those require internet access. We also have one other feature in the mobile apps that's of interest, which is cloud-based bookmarks and notes. So we can go into any Sanford Guide content page and we can enter our own notes. Those are going to appear at the top of the page. We can also bookmark them. And we're building out functionality to actually have this share with the website as well at some point in the next year or two. So you can bookmark things, you can add your own notes. We're not HIPAA compliant, so don't put patient data in there, obviously. But I don't see any reason anyone would be compelled to do that to begin with. So moving back, I'd love to share a little bit about some of the challenges that we've heard going to ASHP mid-year, going to ID week, looking at those poster sessions, going to the academic sessions about stewardship guidelines and the challenges that a lot of folks have had disseminating those guidelines. We heard and read in a number of places that of those who tried to develop their own guidelines apps to disseminate their information, it tended to require a lot of IT resources for setup, and then for maintenance, and then for support. Anytime they wanted to make a change, they had to contact IT, which obviously, as I'm sure some of you have experienced, can take a long time. So it's not the most nimble. It's difficult to keep up with the Android and iOS app requirements. They make changes to their requirements every few months. It's hard to maintain your guidelines, again, when you have to send it to IT or when you have to have somebody who has computer expertise. Maybe you have somebody who studied pharmacology and computer science as a dual degree in undergrad or something like that. It's hard to keep things updated. And then difficulty with adoption. So obviously convincing people to download a new app can be a challenge. And then finally, difficulty retaining users. So we heard from a lot of people that there were frustrations that their users experienced when they searched for a given pathogen or a given drug for their hospital, and instead of seeing their hospital guidelines, discovered their hospital doesn't have guidelines for those yet, or that they're not in the guidelines app. So they get frustrated and they just stop using the app. So those are a few challenges that were faced by hospitals and health systems that we heard, and we decided to take the tools that we built for our editorial board and then share them with hospitals and health systems to solve that problem. So it's it's an add-on to our Sanford Guide All Access platform, so web and mobile, and it allows you to customize your website and mobile apps with local guidelines. So you get all the Sanford Guide content, and then your content lives side by side with that. A few points to share about Stewardship Assist. It typically takes about 5 minutes of your IT time to configure. In some more complex situations, it might take 10 or 15 minutes, and then occasionally it'll take an hour. Typically, for most of our clients, it's a 5-minute call with the IT department, and we give them a little information, they give us a little information, and they're good to go. Our team manages the apps, so we maintain them, we maintain the website. We keep up with the new technologies. When iOS releases a new version, the app will still work. We provide tech support for our end users 365 days a year by email, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 Eastern, by phone. So we have real human beings, sometimes me, who will respond to tech support cases regardless of the day of the week. So that's a nice feature. Again, helps take burden off your IT department. We make it easy to edit, and your editors, which is usually your stewardship committee, are provided with a 1-hour training session per year and a quick reference guide to help them understand how to make changes to the guide. It's fairly simple. I'll show you that in a minute, but we do provide training. The Sanford Guide brand obviously helps out with adoption. Tell people they get Sanford Guide, the hospital's already paid for it, they can just download it for free. They're very inclined to do so. We've had a lot of success with adoption, just telling people you get free Sanford Guide and your guidelines just happen to be there too. Our team can also provide strategies, and I think Dr. Nori, when we get to her portion of the webinar, will share some of the ones that have been effective at Montefiore, but we can provide strategies that were successful in terms of getting adoption and retaining adoption of the platform. And finally, if users are looking for anything about antivirals, antifungals, antibacterials, drugs, bugs, syndromes, they're going to find it in Sanford Guide. So even if you don't have a guideline, those users will not walk away frustrated because they opened your guidelines app and didn't find a guideline for what they were looking for. So that said, I'm going to do a quick walkthrough and then we'll move through to the next section of the demo. So 3 components are included with Stewardship Assist. And again, it's an add-on to our all access platform. So everything to the left of where I am, including the tables and tools menu, this is all part of Sanford Guide All Access. Stewardship Assist adds 3 functions. The first is you get an institutional directory where you can store your hospital guidelines, web pages, PDFs, links, whatever it makes sense to put in there. The second thing is you get the ability to add your local guidelines to any Sanford Guide pathogen, drug, or syndrome page, and I'll show you that in a few. And the third is you have interactive antibiograms within our Spectra of Activity tool. So rather than just seeing the Sanford Guide's qualitative guidelines, you can display your quantitative guidelines, and they'll be linked out to additional information about those drugs, those bugs, and those interactions. So that's the third component. So without further ado, the institutional directory we have here, this is County General Medical Center, which is our hypothetical hospital. We'll put your acronym or your name of your hospital up here. On the mobile app, your logo will appear on the splash screen of the mobile app, and then again on the home page of the app. So people can just tap your logo if they're looking specifically for your guidelines. These can contain, the directory can contain PDFs again, links, and web pages. So within here, I'm going to go in here and look at the antimicrobial guidelines page, which is just kind of a scratch page that I use for demos. So excuse the content is a little nonsense, but if we go in here, we'll see I have a black bar at the top of the screen. And that's because I'm logged in as an editor. So this is the view that your stewardship committee would have when logged into the site. There are a number of tools I have available. Right now, I'm going to click on Edit Page so that we can get a sense of how easy this editor is to use and how intuitive. So if I go in here, I click Edit Page, I can then scroll down and we will see that we have a toolbar appear up here that looks very similar to what you might have in Microsoft Word or email. You don't need a computer science degree to make these changes. So if we wanted to, maybe we want to remove this line of the table, I can just click in there, find the icon that says delete row. If I click on that icon, I can get rid of the row. Likewise, if maybe I want to change this text, maybe I don't like that. Maybe I want to put in a note here. So I'm going to make that a note. Perhaps I want that note to link out to, let's say the Sanford Guide, the azithromycin page. I can go here and click on the little chain to add a link. It's going to be an internal link. I can just type AZITH, and we can see it's going to filter down the results, and it's going to show Sanford Guide azithromycin page. I'm going to go ahead and add that link, insert that. Likewise, maybe we wanted to put in a link for some reason to the weather, so we'll go to weather.gov. I can click here, again, insert a link. We can do an external link also. And you can either type it in or paste it, but I don't want .com, I want .gov. There we go. So we'll go ahead and do that. I like to open them in a new window just to keep things clean, and we can insert that. You see also we have the option to insert anchors, which basically jumps you around on the page, or email addresses. So if you want people to be able to generate an email from your site, you can do that as well. So there are those links. Similarly, we have some, we have a list down below. If I want to take this list and make it a bullet list, I can just highlight, the 2 rows. I can go ahead and make it a bullet list. It's fairly easy to add text, and there are a lot of different ways to format. So pretty standard tools. We can do tables, we can do images, as you see here. Images do go through Sanford Guide because we run them through virus checkers and compress them first. But we have all of this information. When we're done, we can scroll to the bottom, we can click Save or Publish Changes. If we click Save, what that does is that does exactly what it says. It saves it, but our end users can't see it. So the other editors can see these changes, but we can't, or we can publish them, which means that the changes we just made will go live on the web in real time, and they'll go live tomorrow in our daily app update. So I'm just going to say we changed some links. And this is really for auditing purposes. If you ever want to see all the history of your changes, you can do that fairly easily. So that's how we make changes, and the changes are there. We can click on this link. It's going to take us to weather.gov. We can click on our note, and it will take us to a Sanford Guide content page. So a lot of flexibility in terms of what you put in this menu. If you're part of a hospital system, we often add separate tabs for each facility at your hospital. So maybe you have some guidelines that apply to everyone, and then you have hospital-specific ones. You can link back and forth between those guidelines, so you don't have to type in the same information twice. So that's the institutional directory. The other two features that I'd like to share with you today are stewardship alerts and the antibiograms. So let's do stewardship alerts first. So I'm on the azithromycin page here. What if azithromycin, maybe there's a drug shortage, maybe it's not in our formulary, maybe the cost is too high, maybe we have specific guidelines that are very different than Sanford guides, or perhaps Sanford guide suggests a dose that's slightly more or slightly less than what we would use at our hospital. I can go ahead, I can click on this flag, and I can add in what's called a stewardship alert. That's what we call them. So that's the, or antimicrobial stewardship program alert. I'm gonna go ahead and just call this formulary restriction. There we go, formulary restriction. And I can put in, not on formulary. Really, I can enter whatever I want here. It uses the same exact tools as we used on the institutional directory to change those pages. And then please consider alternatives. And then I can link to whatever alternatives I want to, right? So I can link to other drugs. I can link to the Sanford guide page. I can link to my own page. I can link into our formulary. Maybe we have a page that shows restricted drugs. We can put that in. Maybe it's a formulary page, whatever. Again, we have save and publish. Save means I can see it and my fellow editors can see it, but our users cannot. Publish makes it go live immediately. Difference here is that the next time your users go into the app, even if it's not the next day, if they go to this page, they will see that alert first on their screen. So you'll see the page just reloaded, azithromycin, but instead of showing the Sanford guide content right away, we now have a separate tab. We've got CGMC, and that's the default tab. That will always display first. So if I'm a user, that's what I'm going to see first. I can always click over to Sanford guide content, so that cannot be edited, but your information will always show first, and that's the same on the mobile app. And just while I'm taking a breath here, I'm going to remind you, if you do have any questions as I'm speaking or later on in the webinar, feel free to enter those through the Q&A, and we will answer those at the end. So that's the second feature. Again, we've got the institutional menu, we've got stewardship alerts. We can do all the same things in here as we can over here. The third feature is antibiograms. So I showed you earlier the Sanford guide spectrum of activity, but maybe you don't want to look at Sanford guide's qualitative data. Maybe you want to know, what are the results from my microbiology lab? So this is an institutional antibiogram. Some of the numbers here are fabricated, so don't put too much weight in them. But we basically have a couple different things. We have drugs along the top, so you can define which drugs will be displayed, which bugs will be displayed. And then on the interactions, if we click on one, it's going to show us the Sanford guide recommendation if there is one. Often it just says, no data or not recommended. But it'll also show us our susceptibility. So we've got your 99% susceptible. We have your number of isolates. We have some notes here, so we can see it's medium expense. It's not on the formulary. These are obviously dummy notes, but you get the general sense of how you could use this field. You could direct people to other drugs for a given condition. So maybe you don't want people using meropenem for E. coli. You could say use something else, and they'll see that when they click or tap on this interaction. We can enter in as many data sets as you want. So for some of our clients, we have 2 data sets per year. We have an inpatient data set and an outpatient data set. Some of our clients are ambulatory facilities, so all they have is outpatient data. So we just have 1 data set per year, keeps it simple. Other clients have 20 hospitals and a bunch of outpatient facilities. For those, we have a list of all different data sets. So we don't just have inpatient and outpatient, we have inpatient and outpatient for every hospital. For some of our clients, they've been clients for 2 or 3 years. So we've got multiple years of data. And we're actually going to be building some tools probably next year to be able to compare those data sets and identify areas of success and areas that obviously need some attention. So we can do that. Every year, we give you 1 free upload of your antibiograms. So that's wrapped into the subscription cost. So you just email us with a PDF or with a Word document or with an Excel document, and we will go ahead and take care of that transfer. If you want to do more than that, we do have some senior level support that's available to take care of that. The other option is you can use paid hours of support. We do offer paid senior level support, and we can do that for you. We're working on a tool that will allow you to upload your own data over time. but that's probably another year away at least, so I don't want to advertise that too much. But for now, you send it to us in whatever format works for you, and then our team will enter it, validate it, and then send it back to you for final review when it gets published. So that is how that gets managed. So that's the antibiogram, and of course, all this information is linked out. So again, if somebody clicks on this and they want to use meropenem for E. coli, they go to the E. coli page. That's going to take them to the Sanford Guide E. coli page. If you have an alert, it's going to show your information first. If you don't, they can scroll down, they can look for meropenem, and they'll see that's for use when the local rate of multi-drug resistance is greater than 10%. So maybe it's not. Maybe we should consider ceftriaxone, ciprofloxacin, et cetera. They can just click back, go back to that antibiogram, look at your susceptibility for other drugs, and make a decision. And then when they're ready to make that decision, they can go ahead and click on that drug, and they'll get the Sanford Guide drug information. Or if you have an alert, it will show your alert first. And likewise, you can just redirect people, or you can just make modifications, but they always have access to Sanford Guide. So I realize that's a whole lot of information, but I did want to share that this information goes out on the web. It also goes out onto the mobile app, and the mobile app, the antibiogram and the stewardship alerts go out in real time, and then the changes to your institutional directory happen on a daily basis. That's usually a morning push. We release the new one. So that concludes the demo portion of our webinar. We'll answer a few questions a little later on in the webinar, but first I'd love to move forward and invite our panelist, Dr. Priya Nori, MD, to join us. Dr. Nori is Assistant Professor of Medicine and Orthopedic Surgery at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, and she's the Program Director of the Infectious Diseases Fellowship Program. She's an alumna of Johns Hopkins University and Albert Einstein College of Medicine, where she received the American Medical Women's Association Glasgow Rubin Achievement Award and was inducted into the Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Society. She completed her internship at Baylor College of Medicine, residency at New York Presbyterian Hospital, Weill Cornell, and then she returned to Einstein Montefiore for fellowship in infectious diseases and stayed on as faculty. She oversees stewardship operations at the Bronx campuses and ambulatory sites. Welcome, Dr. Nori, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Scott. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the Sanford Guide. So I can relay our experience with the Sanford Guide, which has been absolutely wonderful. We are a very large health system, an urban within one of the boroughs of New York City in the Bronx. And so we cover about 14 to 1,500 beds and, multiple admissions discharges a year. And so in about 2017 or 18, we were approached by the Sanford Guide about a partnership. And after some initial kind of working out whether how this would work for our institution, we decided to go forward with it because we felt that the gains were myriad in terms of education to our healthcare providers, to our prescribers, dissemination really of our best practices for stewardship, and then having some type of electronic platform to display our epidemiology. And so we took advantage of that feature right away. And in fact, I would say our antibiograms are probably our #1 access feature. And while we started with 3 hospital antibiogram that we worked with the Sanford Guide to input and display, because they were really able to provide much more support and help, we soon expanded that to outpatient stuff, to ICU specific antibiograms by campus, and we've really maximized, in our opinion, the use of this feature, which again is probably our #1 accessed pages, I would say, on our app. The thing that I really like best about working with Sanford Guide is the customer service, really. So there's a high level of technical expertise, but also guidance provided by this staff, especially Scott, who can kind of steer you in the right path if as far as uploading certain things or in certain formats, and making sure that if you started something, you actually finish it and you publish it and you put it out there on the app. And so the communication is really great. Every month, just about, we have a report sent to us that has our usage data. So we can see how we're doing, and we can see if the outreach activities and the interfaces we're having with clinicians are actually helping. So we're able to intensify our efforts to get people onto the app and using the content on the website and the app based on the feedback that we get. And so that's really, really valuable. So for instance, as expected, during the couple months during the pandemic, unfortunately, activations of our users sort of went down. This was expected to some extent, because I don't even think that frontline providers had access to their phones. They were all decked out in PPE and such. But then thankfully, as the pandemic winded down and things were returning to usual business in our hospital system, and another round of new house officers joined our hospital system, we noticed that that activity picked up again nicely, and this has been really helpful. I also run our fellowship program, our infectious diseases fellowship program, and I got to tell you, this is like the #1 resource used by our fellows, and it's absolutely invaluable, especially on call overnight if they're contacted about a challenging patient scenario. This has been absolutely a godsend to them. Also to the infectious diseases attendings, the pharmacists, and it's not to say that the content is only for people with ID training to understand and interpret, but it's really, you know, compared to how it may have been in the pocket guide version that physically went into your pocket, the way that it's displayed now is much more user-friendly, and it's really accessible to everyone at so many levels, whether they are PAs, medical students, residents, fellows, mature attendings, allied health professionals. It's really open to use by all. If any of you are part of a medical school, or you provide teaching for medical students, this is also a tremendous resource that we've found for them, to the point where it's been totally integrated into their entire microbiology course and their ID curriculum. Like, they really cannot live without it at this point, nor can their course directors who've built their educational curricula really around our Sanford Guide content. So many positives for our team. And while I don't directly edit the content, our pharmacists, our infectious diseases pharmacists and data analysts are really in charge of making sure the content is there and updated on a regular basis. I certainly oversee all that, and I know that it's been a very seamless and smooth process. And there's no limit really to the amount of stuff that you can house on your institution-specific site. And so you can, you know, for instance, if you have a site-specific COVID guideline, a treatment protocol that, as we all know, gets changed, you know, at least every week or so, with just trying to keep on top of the changing data. And you can do that. You can do that pretty seamlessly. You could pull it, you could edit it and put up a new one, and even with upgrades that are coming out, you can even inform people, I believe, that, hey, check out this new thing we just added to our content, where you can find it exactly here, and be sure that you have seen this before the end of the day, so that you know now what is first line treatment or isolation, or there's just so many real-time practical implications for big hospitals like ours. So I hope that little insight into our relationship was helpful.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nori. I'm curious if you could share with us a little bit about how you were disseminating guidelines before you started working with Sanford Guide. What different approaches you tried and how this worked?
Yeah, it was a very local approach. It required physically for us to go to a certain unit, to interface with the providers, introduce ourselves, make sure they felt comfortable with us, give some kind of lecture, and then disseminate the guidelines by email. We did have a website. We have a website that's within our hospital system's website, and we also have one that our medical school hosts for us that is open to everyone. But nevertheless, these things are never really accessed that much. They're not in the most user-friendly format, or you have very little control basically of things that you're not designing and curating yourself. And so it was a challenge. We would get to maybe a third of the hospital. We would be able to disseminate information to the people that we spent most time with. So this would be maybe medical students, internal medicine trainees, and people very specific to our little bubble. But we were not really reaching the surgical departments. We were not reaching the surgical subspecialties or the ERs to the same extent. And now we really can, to a much, much larger degree. And we don't necessarily have to physically be present to do that, which is a very nice feature, especially these days.
Great. I see that we have a couple of current other fellow Stewardship Assist clients who are in the attendee group. And I was curious if you would be willing to share some of the strategies that you've used at Montefiore to get folks to adopt the app and keep using it.
Yeah, so believe it or not, wasn't that much work because of the many, many years of just an incredible reputation that the Sanford Guide has. And so what's funny is that the more senior providers were very, very familiar and adopted to it right away because they had been using it since they were trainees. And so for the younger folks who maybe hadn't necessarily used it or heard of it, being recent graduates or whatever, once we demoed it for them and once we showed them that there's a centralized place that all the stuff that you need to get through your day, where all of that is located, and now including some of the traditional non-ID stuff, so calculators of various types and things of that nature. And so that they were convinced pretty quickly. And so that didn't take much time at all.
Great, thank you. I was also wondering, in terms of, you mentioned the antibiogram feature and how that's been useful. Would you say that that's the feature that has had the biggest impact, or if there are any other features that have come along that have helped as well, or that you're hoping that we might add in the future?
Yeah, so the antibiogram had been traditionally our biggest hit, I guess. And so that was a place where people would consistently return time after time. And that makes a lot of sense because it's not necessarily one of these things that you're gonna look at once and absorb all that information right away, nor is it meant to be used that way. It's meant to be referenced again and again. So that was the biggest feature. And then more recently, with the updated, with the COVID specific content, which is updated regularly and is extremely evidence-based, and it really, there's just so much content out there these days related to COVID, and it's nice to have a place that you trust, where it's curated and you can refer to, and it's quick. It's the right amount that we can use and digest these days. So it's right in step with how we function. And so that's been a really nice feature. The feature that I think we've mentioned a lot, Scott, that we've been anticipating for our system is this ability to send notifications and messages. And I think in this COVID era, it's extremely important. So like, for instance, something like, don't forget your N95s, or cluster of, this might get dicey, but new cluster reported at this location, make sure you are using all the right equipment. And actually, in a recent conversation I had with our chief quality officer, he was really excited about the ability to be able to do that for, hundreds to thousands of people that work in the hospital.
Sure. Great.
So
Yeah, and for those on the call who are not familiar with Stewardship Assist yet, that is a feature we don't yet have, but it's currently in development, and we're hoping to roll it out by the end of the year. So I'd say that, from my perspective, as somebody who's helped to develop this product, the product was born out of, as I said, going to ASHP mid-year, going to ID Week, listening to struggles that people were having, and trying to customize our platform that we already had to help it address some of those struggles and make it less of a struggle. Because obviously you all have a lot of things to juggle on any given day, and having to deal with the technology burden of an app to try to get your guidelines out shouldn't be something that you have to worry about, and quite frankly is not efficiently done by an individual hospital or health system's IT department. It's far more efficient for us to do it. We generate something and then we share it with everybody. And I'd say the benefit of that model is also that, we've had ideas from Montefiore over the past year and a half that they've been clients, from some of our other enterprise clients. They said, gee, it would really be helpful for us if you could add in this feature. So one of the features I didn't show you today is an editorial dashboard. So, there were 2 tabs, and I realized I didn't touch on the dashboard. I'll do that very quickly now, but I'll just show you this. So obviously we've got the CGMC menu, but right next to that, there's another one called Stewardship Assist. And what that is it's a dashboard that only your editors can see. And as they're essentially using Stewardship Assist, adding in a bunch of alerts, adding in a bunch of pages, it can be difficult to manage all of that information, figure out, gee, when did we last update that? Did we put in the new guideline that we discussed at the spring stewardship meeting? So what we did is we went ahead and we built out a dashboard that displays all of those different pages, shows you, whether it's a page, whether it's an alert, who the primary editor is, when it was modified last. So if you see something that has a date of 2017, it's probably time to review that page. When it was last modified, state whether it's published. So maybe you have a page that you created, but it hasn't been published. So I know I sent a bunch of emails out to clients a few weeks ago, just reminding people of their unpublished pages and how they can get those into circulation. So we see here there's a working copy. We've got 2 by my colleague, Stephen Brimley, who was clearly making changes, and he hasn't published them. So we should probably review those. They're a few years old. So that's really what that functionality is. As Dr. Nori mentioned, we're adding push notifications later this year. We're building out advanced analytics to help you decide what works well and what doesn't, within your hospital. We're already able to report on which pages are receiving the most traffic, so that's helpful. But we're soon going to be able to track it by user, by department, however you want to classify those groups of people. So that's something that we're hoping to release next year. We have an algorithm tool that we're building right now that will probably be launched in the next couple weeks. And essentially that's a decision tree algorithm. So, if you have a nice algorithm chart, which currently displays as an image on Stewardship Assist, obviously that's not necessarily the best way to do things and can be confusing. People are having to scroll around on an image on their phone. We're going to have a decision tree where a question comes up, you answer yes, no, you say, well, I did this for the patient exhibits that, and it will take you through that decision process to an outcome. So that's something we're building right now, again, in response to feedback from our clients. We only have a couple minutes left. I see we have one question in the question and answer that I haven't answered yet. So I'll do that right now. It says how to upload institutional guidelines into Stewardship Assist. So essentially, when you sign up as a new Stewardship Assist customer, you send all of your guidelines to our team. That's included in your configuration fee. That's, you know, all the technical stuff we do on the back end, but it's also transferring your guidelines over to our site, which is done by senior members of our staff. And then sometimes also, if it's something that requires clinical interpretation, we have a antimicrobial stewardship PharmD who we work with, who will go through your guidelines, go through your antibiograms, and help us with that migration. Anytime there's a need for interpretation, we bring him on board. He'll communicate back and forth with you. I'll communicate back and forth with you. We transfer all the information onto the platform. So now you've got a site that works, right? Obviously, part of what makes Stewardship Assist great is you can update things. So you can always go into any existing page as an editor. You just got to log in as an editor, click edit, and make those changes. We do one training session per year for your editorial board. So for those of you who are current clients and haven't taken advantage of that this year, I encourage you to reach out to your account manager. They'll set up a meeting, probably with me, and I'll walk you through that editorial process. If you have new guidelines, totally new, you can create new pages on your own. We always encourage you to bring us into that process because there are some tips and tricks that we can do faster on the front end than on the back end. And then once you are ready to publish that, we make a few final tweaks so that it all looks good, it formats, it searches and indexes properly, and then we publish that for your users. So basically it's an email to your account manager. They'll connect you with either me or one of my colleagues or the PharmD we work with. We'll kind of walk you through that process and then publish things when they're ready. Another question that just came in is whether we'll be sending out recordings of this meeting. I'm hoping to be able to do that sometime in the next week. Be in touch. We've got your email addresses. We'll shoot you a follow-up email in case you'd like to share this with your colleagues. We do have a couple other sessions, as I mentioned earlier. We have 2 mobile app demos later today. We have a session with Jeb Sanford, David Seals, and myself, basically the product development team, to discuss what you love, what you'd love to see in the Sanford Guide digital products. So that's happening later today. I encourage you to sign up for that. And I just realized I have not yet put the link into the chat box. I'm going to do that right now. Give me just a moment. Copying it and pasting it. So if you do want to register for any of those sessions later today, you can do that at your convenience. I think the next one is at 1 or 2 o'clock Eastern time. I'll need to check my calendar. But you can go ahead and register for those. They're all half-hour sessions, so a little more forgiving than me talking at you for a full hour, but we hope you can join us for those. I'd love to thank Dr. Nori. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today, for sharing your experiences. You know, if anyone else who's a Stewardship Assist client, or if you become a client and you have questions, I will say that the folks who are currently using it, if you ever need tips, are very open to sharing their expertise. I'm not selling your services here, Dr. Nori, don't worry.
Sure, anytime, truly.
But
Anytime,
it is a little bit of a mind meld. So yeah, we have a core group of frequent editors and frequent users who have kindly shared their expertise with others, and I think that really helps improve the product as a whole and improve everyone's experience with it, and make sure that you're getting what you need. So thank you, Dr. Nori, and also thank you to all of you who attended. So I realize everyone's very busy right now, and taking an hour out of your day for this is a challenge, but thank you. And as somebody who does not practice medicine myself, I'm going to also thank you for the work you're doing right now. It's more important than ever. And thank you for attending, and I hope you all have a wonderful end of the day and end of the week. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Scott.
Bye-bye.